Albert Pike, drawing from Transcendental Magic, presents the significance of Kabbalism as an essential key to Masonic esotericism by describing the sense of wonder experienced when entering its inner sanctuary. There, one encounters a doctrine that is at once logical, simple, and absolute. It reveals a necessary harmony between ideas and symbols, and a sanctification of fundamental truths through primal characters. Within it appears a trinity of words, letters, and numbers, forming a philosophy as straightforward as the alphabet yet as profound and boundless as the creative word itself. Its principles surpass even the clarity of the teachings attributed to Pythagoras, offering a theology so concise it can be expressed through counting on one's fingers. It conveys the concept of the infinite in a form graspable even by a child, using 10 ciphers, 22 letters, and the figures of a triangle, a square, and a circle as its complete symbolic structure. These form the essential elements of the Qabbalah, understood as the foundational principles of the written word, which reflects the spoken word responsible for the creation of the world. Hebrew theology was traditionally separated into 3 divisions: the law, the soul of the law, and the soul of the law. The law itself was openly taught to all the people of Israel. The Mishnah, regarded as the inner meaning or soul of the law, was entrusted to rabbis and teachers. Beyond this lay the Qabbalah, the innermost essence, the soul of the soul, which was carefully concealed and reserved only for the most advanced initiates, who were instructed in its hidden doctrines. Certain Jewish mystical traditions recount that Moses ascended Mount Sinai on 3 occasions, each time remaining in the divine presence for 40 days. During the first period, he received the tablets of the written law. In the second, he was given the deeper essence of that law. In the third, he was instructed in the profound mysteries of the Qabbalah, the innermost spiritual dimension of the teaching. It is said that Moses concealed these secret teachings within the first 4 books of the Pentateuch, leading generations of Kabbalistic students to search those texts for hidden meanings. Just as the spiritual aspect of a human being is veiled within the physical body, so too the unwritten traditions, the Mishnah and the Qabbalah, are believed to be concealed within the written Mosaic law. The term Qabbalah signifies a hidden or secret tradition, an unwritten doctrine said to have been given to humanity so that, through its subtle principles, one might come to understand both the outer universe and the inner nature of existence. The origins of Kabbalism have long been debated. Early initiates of its mysteries held that its teachings were first imparted by the divine to a host of angels before the fall of humanity. These angels later passed the knowledge to Adam, enabling humanity, through understanding these principles, to regain its lost spiritual condition. According to tradition, the angel Raziel was sent to instruct Adam in these mysteries. Other angels were said to guide subsequent patriarchs in this complex wisdom. Tophiel instructed Shem, Raphael taught Isaac, Metatron guided Moses, and Michael instructed David. Another account describes the transmission of this knowledge from Adam to Noah, then to Abraham, who carried it into Egypt. There, portions of the doctrine gradually became known, influencing Egyptian thought and eventually spreading into other Eastern philosophical systems. Moses, educated in the wisdom of Egypt, was initiated into these teachings early in life, but deepened his understanding during his years in the wilderness, where he devoted himself to their study and received further instruction from an angel. He is also said to have passed these teachings to 70 elders, who continued the tradition through successive generations. Among those who preserved this unbroken chain, David and Solomon were regarded as particularly well-versed in the knowledge of the Qabbalah. According to Eliphaz Levi, the 3 principal texts of Kabbalistic tradition are the Sepher Yetzirah, known as the Book of Formation, the Sepher HaZohar, called the Book of Splendor, and the Apocalypse, or Book of Revelation. The precise dates of these writings remain uncertain. Kabbalistic tradition attributes the authorship of the Sepher Yetzirah to Abraham, though it is widely considered the oldest of these works and is often thought to have been written later, possibly by Rabbi Akiba in the early centuries of the Common Era. The Sepher HaZohar is traditionally attributed to Simeon ben Jokai, a devoted disciple of Akiba. According to legend, Rabbi Simeon was condemned to death in the 2nd century by a Roman ruler who governed alongside the emperor. Escaping this fate, he fled with his son and concealed themselves within a cave. There, in seclusion, he is said to have written the teachings of the Zohar, assisted by the prophet Elias, who appeared to them from time to time. During the 12 years spent in hiding, Simeon developed the intricate symbolism known as the greater face and the lesser face. It is recounted that while speaking to his disciples, he passed away, and with his death the lamp of Israel was extinguished. His passing was said to be marked by extraordinary and supernatural events. Tradition further maintains that the secret doctrines of Kabbalism had existed since the beginning of the world, yet Simeon was the first permitted to commit them to writing. Many centuries later, the manuscripts attributed to him were said to have been rediscovered and made available to the world by Moses de Leon. However, it is often considered more likely that Moses de Leon himself compiled the Zohar in the early 14th century, drawing upon older, unwritten teachings preserved among Jewish mystics. The Apocalypse, commonly associated with Saint John the Divine, is likewise uncertain in origin, and the true identity of its author has never been conclusively determined. Because of its brevity and its importance as a key to Kabbalistic thought, the Sepher Yetzirah has long been regarded as fundamental to the system. The Sepher HaZohar, by contrast, remains only partially available in English, though it has been rendered into other languages. Within its pages are contained numerous philosophical doctrines, and its principal ideas have been restated in various forms by later writers. Symbolic illustrations associated with Kabbalism often depict the name of God expressed in 72 languages upon the petals of a mystic flower, accompanied by corresponding divine powers. Beneath such imagery are frequently shown two trees, one bearing the symbols of the planets, the other the signs of the zodiac and the names of the tribes of Israel. The esoteric teachings of the Qabbalah align closely with the hidden doctrines found in many philosophical traditions, yet their method of revelation remains distinctive. Its wisdom is disclosed to those prepared to receive it, while remaining concealed from those lacking understanding. As religious texts have come to be studied with more advanced methods of interpretation, it has increasingly been suggested that these writings are not merely historical accounts. Rather, the figures described as kings, sages, prophets, and saviors may be understood as symbolic representations of qualities within the human being. The influence of Kabbalism upon medieval thought, both in Jewish and Christian traditions, was profound. It encouraged the belief that sacred writings contained a concealed doctrine serving as the true key to their meaning, inspiring many scholars to seek out these hidden truths and to preserve their discoveries in written form. The principles of Kabbalism are deeply interwoven with those of alchemy, Hermetic philosophy, Rosicrucian teachings, and Freemasonry. Over time, Kabbalism and Hermeticism came to be regarded as nearly interchangeable terms, both referring to the secret wisdom and esoteric traditions of the ancient world. What began as a relatively simple body of teachings in the early centuries gradually developed into a highly complex theological system, whose doctrines became increasingly intricate and difficult to interpret. Within this tradition, the applications of Kabbalistic science were divided into 5 distinct branches. The natural Qabbalah served those who sought to investigate the mysteries of nature. The analogical Qabbalah demonstrated the relationships existing between all forms of life and substance, teaching that all things share a single essence, and that humanity, as the lesser universe, reflects the greater universe of the divine. The contemplative Qabbalah was intended to reveal, through higher intellectual perception, the mysteries of celestial realms, enabling the mind to grasp the vast and immeasurable planes of existence and the beings within them. The astrological Qabbalah concerned itself with the nature, power, and substance of the stars and planets, as well as the hidden structure of the earth itself. Finally, the magical Qabbalah was pursued by those who sought influence over unseen forces and entities, and it was also esteemed as a means of healing through the use of talismans, amulets, charms, and sacred invocations. The Sepher Yetzirah, as described by Adolf Frank, differs from many other sacred writings in that it does not attempt to explain the world and its phenomena by relying upon a direct interpretation of the divine will or by presenting itself as the voice of ultimate authority. Instead, it reveals the nature of God through an estimation of the complexity and diversity of His creation. In preparing this work for study, several English translations have been carefully compared. The resulting version reflects the principal elements found in each, though it is not derived entirely from any single Hebrew or Latin source. Its intention is to convey the spirit rather than the literal wording of the original text, while remaining faithful to its essential meaning. The earliest known English translation of the Sepher Yetzirah was produced in the 19th century by Reverend Dr. Isidore Kalish, whose edition included both Hebrew and English text. His work served as a foundation for later interpretations, though additional material from other scholars has been incorporated, and certain passages have been revised for clarity. Other reference works have also contributed to the understanding of the text, including writings attributed to Dr. John Pister, later compilations by Wynne Westcott, and further translations presented by Charles F. Horn and Knut Stenring. Various manuscripts in German, Hebrew, and Latin have also been examined. Some sections of the Sepher Yetzirah are believed to be older and more authentic than others, though the debates surrounding their origin remain complex and inconclusive. These passages are therefore included as they naturally occur within the work. The text begins by describing the divine source, the Lord of hosts, the living God, King of the universe, all-powerful, merciful, and exalted, dwelling in eternity and holiness. This Supreme Being engraved his name and brought forth the universe through 32 hidden paths of wisdom, employing 3 fundamental expressions, numbers, letters, and sounds, which are united within him. It declares that 10 Sephiroth, or primary attributes arising from the Ineffable One, together with 22 letters, form the foundation of all existence. Among these letters, 3 are designated as mothers, 7 as double, and 12 as simple. The 10 Sephiroth emerging from nothingness are likened to the 10 fingers and 10 toes, arranged in balance, with a sacred covenant at their center. This covenant is expressed spiritually as the Word, and physically as the sign of the covenant given to Abraham. The teaching emphasizes that there are 10 Sephiroth, neither fewer nor greater, urging contemplation and understanding of their mystery. Through them, all things are to be examined, and the Word is to be returned to its divine source. The Creator alone forms all things, and his attributes, though 10 in number, are without limit. These 10 Sephiroth are described as possessing infinite qualities, infinite beginning and end, infinite good and evil, infinite height and depth, and infinite directions extending to every quarter. Above all stands the One, the faithful King, who governs everything from his eternal dwelling. Their appearance is compared to a flash of lightning or a radiant flame, without beginning or end. The divine Word is present within them in both their emanation and their return. They move according to divine command, like a whirlwind, and bow before the throne of the Most High. Their end is bound to their beginning, just as a flame is inseparable from the burning coal. The unity of the divine is absolute, and before that unity no counting can truly exist. The study of these mysteries requires restraint and reverence. One is instructed to guard speech and thought, maintaining silence when approaching these profound ideas, for they are likened to living beings that move swiftly and return again, establishing a sacred covenant of understanding. From these principles arise 10 emanations from nothingness. First is the Spirit of the living God, whose voice, spirit, and word together form the Holy Spirit. From this Spirit emerges air, within which the letters are formed and established, divided into their respective groups, yet always subordinate to the originating spirit. From air comes primordial water, within which the letters are shaped and arranged as boundaries and structures, forming a protective enclosure. From this process, the substance of the earth is brought forth. From the water arises fire, through which the divine throne is established and celestial beings are formed as ministers. Through the interplay of these fundamental elements, the divine habitation itself is constructed. The teaching continues by describing how 3 consonants were selected from among the simple letters, corresponding to a secret belonging to the 3 primary elements, air, water, and fire. These were sealed by the divine Spirit and formed into a great name, through which the universe itself was established and enclosed in 6 directions. Turning toward the heights above, the upper realm was sealed. Turning downward, the depths were enclosed. Facing forward, the east was fixed. Turning backward, the west was established. Movement toward the right secured the south, while turning to the left completed the north. Thus the totality of space was defined and ordered through the permutations of this sacred name. From this arrangement emerged the 10 ineffable existences out of nothing. From the spirit of the living God came forth air. From air arose water. From water came fire. And from fire extended the dimensions of height and depth, along with the 4 directions of the world. The doctrine affirms that there are 22 fundamental letters, of which 3 are primary elements, 7 are double in nature, and 12 are simple. The 3 foundational letters correspond to a balance, in which opposing forces such as virtue and vice are held in equilibrium, governed by a mediating principle. One is silent like water, another active like fire, while the third serves as a harmonizing breath between them. These 22 letters, once established, were combined, weighed, and interchanged in every possible way, forming all beings that exist and all that will come into being. They were produced through the voice and impressed upon the air by breath, and articulated through 5 regions of the human mouth, each corresponding to a distinct class of sound. In this way, speech itself becomes a reflection of the creative process. The letters were arranged in a circular form, like a wall containing 231 gates, which turn in both directions. When turned one way, they signify good. When reversed, they signify evil. Through their combinations, contrasting conditions emerge, demonstrating how subtle changes in arrangement can transform meaning and outcome. By combining each letter with all others, and repeating this process throughout the series, all possible formations are generated. From these combinations arise every creature and every language, all proceeding from one name through the varied expressions of its letters. Creation is thus described as the bringing forth of substance from nothingness. The intangible is shaped into form, and all existence is called into being through the power of the spoken word. Each of the 22 letters represents a fundamental part of a greater unity, like components of a single living body. From their interplay arises the diversity of forms in the universe. The 3 primary elements again appear as a balanced system, containing within themselves a profound and hidden mystery. They are expressed through dynamic and passive aspects, giving rise to successive generations of existence. These elements operate on multiple levels, within the universe, within the cycle of time, and within the human being. In the cosmos, they manifest as fire forming the heavens, water forming the earth, and air maintaining the balance between them. In the cycle of the year, they appear as heat, cold, and a temperate condition that harmonizes the extremes. Within the human form, they correspond to the head, the abdomen, and the chest, each associated with one of the elements and brought into equilibrium by the mediating principle. Each of the 3 fundamental letters is said to dominate in its respective element. One governs the air, establishing balance in the world, moderation in time, and the central region in humanity. Another presides over water, shaping the earth, producing cold, and forming the lower regions of the human body. The third governs fire, forming the heavens, producing heat, and shaping the head. Through their interaction, all structures, cosmic, temporal, and human, are brought into ordered existence. The doctrine next turns to the 7 double letters, which possess a dual mode of expression, being pronounced in both aspirated and unaspirated forms. Through this duality, they become symbols of contrast, softness and hardness, strength and weakness, reflecting the balanced tensions present throughout existence. These 7 letters are said to represent essential qualities within life: wisdom, riches, fertility, life, power, peace, and grace. Yet each of these qualities exists alongside its opposite, revealing the conditions to which human existence is subject. Wisdom stands opposed to foolishness, riches to poverty, fertility to barrenness, life to death, power to servitude, peace to conflict, and beauty to deformity. In this way, the letters express not only ideals but also their negations, illustrating the polarity inherent in all things. They are further associated with the structure of space itself, corresponding to the 6 directions, height and depth, east and west, north and south, together with a central point, symbolized by the holy temple, which sustains and unifies them. Though these directions might suggest fewer divisions, the teaching insists upon the presence of 7, emphasizing a hidden principle that invites deeper contemplation and understanding. Having been designed, established, purified, and combined, these 7 letters are said to have given rise to fundamental patterns within creation. From them emerged the 7 planets, the cycle of 7 days, and the 7 gateways of perception within the human body. These gateways are identified as the 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and the mouth. Through the same principle were also formed the 7 heavens, 7 earths, and recurring cycles of sacred time, all reflecting a universal pattern governed by the number 7. The 7 planets are named as Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, while the days correspond to the familiar sequence of the week. Each letter is said to dominate a particular quality, which it crowns and combines with the others, thereby shaping aspects of the universe, divisions of time, and parts of the human body. One governs wisdom and is associated with the moon, the beginning of the weekly cycle, and the right eye. Another governs riches and is linked to Mars, the second day, and the right ear. A third governs fertility and corresponds to the sun, the third day, and the right nostril. Another presides over life and is connected with Venus, the fourth day, and the left eye. One governs power and is associated with Mercury, the fifth day, and the left ear. Another governs peace and corresponds to Saturn, the sixth day, and the left nostril. The final one governs grace and is linked with Jupiter, the seventh day, and the mouth. Through these same 7, the structure of the world is further elaborated into cycles and divisions, multiple layers of earth and heaven, expanses of land and sea, and repeating measures of time, including weeks and years, culminating in periods of release and renewal. All these reflect the predominance of the number 7 as a sacred measure within creation. The combinations of these letters also illustrate the principle of multiplication through arrangement. From a small number of elements arise increasingly complex structures, expanding beyond the capacity of speech or hearing to fully comprehend. This demonstrates the generative power inherent in even the simplest components when brought into ordered relation. Beyond these are the 12 simple letters, which correspond to fundamental aspects of human experience, including speech, thought, movement, sight, hearing, action, generation, smell, sleep, emotion, taste, and joy. These letters also align with 12 directions extending throughout space, branching outward in all dimensions as the structural arms of the universe. Through their establishment and combination, these 12 give rise to further patterns. The 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 divisions of the year, and 12 principal organs within the human body. The organs include the limbs and internal structures necessary for life, forming a complete system within the human being. Each of the 12 letters is said to dominate a particular faculty, which it crowns and combines with the others, shaping corresponding aspects of the cosmos, time, and the human form. One governs speech and is linked with Aries, a particular month, and the right foot. Another governs thought and corresponds with Taurus and the right kidney. A third governs movement and is associated with Gemini and the left foot. Another presides over sight and is connected with Cancer and the right hand. One governs hearing and is linked with Leo and the left kidney. Another governs work and corresponds with Virgo and the left hand. One letter is said to preside over generation, and through its power was formed Libra in the heavens, a particular month in the yearly cycle, and a Gaul within the human form. Another governs the sense of smell, shaping Scorpio, its corresponding month, and the small intestine. A third rules over sleep, giving rise to Sagittarius, its place in the year, and the stomach. Another presides over anger, forming Capricorn, its associated month, and the liver. One governs taste or the act of swallowing, corresponding to Aquarius, its appointed time, and the esophagus. The final letter governs mirth, and through it are formed Pisces, its place in the cycle of months, and the spleen. In this manner, each faculty is linked with a celestial sign, a division of time, and a function within the human organism. These forces are not arranged in isolation, but in a state of dynamic opposition. They are set against one another as if in conflict, ordered like provinces and fortified like a wall. Each is armed and balanced by its counterpart, establishing a system of tension and equilibrium that extends through all levels of existence. At the foundation of this structure remain the three primary elements, from which proceed the formative principles of creation. From these emerge the governing forces of the heavens and the divisions of the zodiac. Their reality is confirmed through three enduring witnesses: the universe itself, the cycle of the year, and the constitution of humanity. Above is the celestial form, below is the material world, and within is the human heart, with a divine presence at the center, maintaining order among them all. The relationship of the elements is expressed through their arrangement: fire above, water below, and air between them, acting as a balancing force. Fire is seen as sustaining water, while the qualities of silence, motion, and breath illustrate their interaction. Together they form a unified system in which opposing tendencies are brought into harmony. The cosmic order is further illustrated through symbolic kingship. The celestial pattern is likened to a ruler seated upon a throne, the cycle of time to a sovereign governing a realm, and the human heart to a commander directing the forces of the body. In each case, authority is centralized and sustained by a higher principle. Opposition is an essential part of this design. Good and evil are set against one another, each arising from its own nature, yet each also influencing and refining the other. Good is preserved for what is good, and evil for what is corrupt, yet their interaction serves a greater purpose within the whole. Within this system are three distinct conditions: one entirely aligned with good, another with evil, and a third that maintains balance between them. The pattern continues with 7 arranged in opposition, with a central point of equilibrium. 12 further divisions exist in a state of tension, some generating attraction, others aversion, some sustaining life, and others bringing about its end. Among these, certain forces give rise to harmony and affection, while others produce discord. Some sustain vitality, while others diminish it. These functions are reflected in the organs and faculties of the human body, each contributing to the overall balance of life. Over all these divisions presides the one supreme ruler, governing from an eternal and holy center. Though arranged in layers, 1 above 3, 3 above 7, and 7 above 12, all remain interconnected as parts of a single unified system. The entire structure is founded upon the 22 letters through which the divine name, the Lord of Hosts, brought the universe into being. Through numbers, letters, and sounds, all creatures were formed, and all future creations were set into motion. It is said that when Abraham came to understand these profound truths, contemplating and grasping their meaning fully, the divine presence appeared to him, acknowledged him as a friend, and established a covenant. This covenant was expressed in 2 forms: one spiritual, associated with the functions of speech and the hands, and one material, associated with the body itself. Through this bond, the mysteries of the letters were revealed to him. They were immersed in water, refined by fire, carried upon the winds, and distributed among the planets and the signs of the zodiac, becoming the living instruments through which creation continues to unfold. The Qabbalists conceived of the supreme deity as an incomprehensible principle, to be approached only by removing, one by one, every attribute that can be known or defined. When all such qualities are set aside, what remains is Ein Sof, the eternal state of being. Though beyond all definition, this absolute is understood to permeate all existence. It is so abstract as to defy comprehension, representing the unconditioned source from which all things arise. From this inscrutable reality emerge substances, essences, and intelligences, yet Ein Sof itself possesses none of these qualities. It may be compared to a vast and fertile field from which countless forms of life arise, each distinct in appearance and nature, yet all rooted in the same unseen ground. These forms, universes, gods, and humanity, draw their existence from that single indefinable essence, and like living things returning to the earth, they ultimately dissolve back into it. Thus Ein Sof alone remains as the eternal and undying source. This principle was described as the most ancient of all realities, without division or distinction, and beyond all attributes such as form or polarity. Its symbol was a closed eye, indicating that it cannot be perceived directly. Although defining it was considered to diminish its nature, certain symbolic representations were employed to suggest its mode of expression. It was often represented by a circle, signifying eternity and boundlessness. This circle was imagined as enclosing an immeasurable and dimensionless field of life, with its boundary representing infinite extension beyond all limits. Within this conception, the divine is both center and totality. The emergence of a center marks the beginning of limitation, for any defined point must eventually return to its source. Thus, all centers that arise within the substance of Ein Sof are finite, while Ein Sof itself remains infinite as the ultimate condition underlying all existence. The circular symbol further suggests a vast, enclosed sphere, within which all creation and dissolution occur. Outside this sphere there is nothing, not even emptiness. Within it exist all elements and principles that will ever participate in the cycles of cosmic birth, growth, and decay. This sphere is described as a cosmic egg, containing within itself the totality of existence, which remains unbroken until the completion of the great cycle, when all things return to their origin. In the process of creation, the diffused life of Ein Sof is said to withdraw from the outer circumference toward the center, forming a single point. This point becomes the first manifestation, the initial limitation of the boundless. As the essence withdraws inward, it leaves behind a vast expanse described as the abyss, or a state of privation. Where once there was only unity, there now appears a dual condition, the central point of radiant manifestation and the surrounding field of diminished presence. The light that once filled all space now shines from this central point outward, rather than existing uniformly everywhere. This process has been described as a contraction within the infinite, producing a primordial space that is not entirely empty but filled with a subtle and lesser degree of light. This state is sometimes likened to a vast, luminous ocean or a crystalline sea, from which all subsequent forms of existence emerge. It is within this field that the structures of creation are gradually brought into being. In the esoteric teachings, a parallel is drawn between this cosmic process and the constitution of the human being. The human form is said to be surrounded by an ovoid field of radiant energy, often described as an auric egg. This sphere serves as the causal body of the individual and bears the same relationship to the physical form as the cosmic sphere does to the universe. The true center of human consciousness resides within this field, extending beyond the limits of the visible body. Just as the universal consciousness contracts into a central point that becomes the supreme governing principle, so within the human auric field consciousness gathers into a focal point known as the ego. From the latent powers contained within this sphere arise all experiences and expressions of the individual across successive states of existence. The human being remains within this field through all cycles of life, death, and rebirth, and it endures beyond physical dissolution. Only at the completion of a greater cycle is liberation attained, when the individual, like the universe itself, is released from the perpetual motion of becoming and returns to the original and eternal source. In the symbolic circular diagram, the concentric rings are used to represent the 40 degrees of vibration, referred to by the Kabbalists as spheres, which proceed from Ein Sof. The outermost circle marks the boundary of space and encloses the field of the Absolute. Within this vastness, the nature of Ein Sof is considered in three aspects, shown by successive divisions within the circle. In the beginning, only the undifferentiated essence permeated the entire expanse, and none of the inner distinctions had yet appeared. As the divine essence gradually concentrated within itself, further limitations became perceptible, each stage representing a more defined expression of the infinite. Thus the primal state, its first limitation, and its further manifestation as light together form a threefold nature, from which all creative powers are ultimately derived. As this concentration continued, a central point emerged within the circle. This point came to be regarded as the first manifestation of the universal essence, the initial act of individualization within the boundless. It is described as the moment when the hidden reality revealed itself through a single luminous center. This point was identified with the name, I Am, and was understood as the first expression of divine self-awareness. It was also called by many symbolic titles, each indicating its primacy and authority: the first crown, the most ancient, the primordial point, and the inscrutable height, for it governs all subsequent emanations. From this radiant point there proceeded a series of 9 additional emanations, forming together a complete system of 10. These were conceived as luminous spheres arranged in the form of a tree. They represent the first structured manifestation within the infinite, not as independent substances, but as reflections of the divine light, much as sunlight is reflected upon the surfaces of the world. These spheres were sometimes likened to shining sapphires, suggesting both their brilliance and their purity. The space that had been left by the withdrawal of the infinite into the central point was then filled by 4 great divisions, described as worlds or spheres. Through each of these, the light of the 10 emanations was reflected, producing 4 corresponding patterns or trees, each bearing the imprint of the original tenfold structure. These 4 worlds represent successive stages of manifestation, descending from the most subtle and divine to the most concrete and material. Each of these worlds contains 10 powers or spheres, consisting of a primary source and 9 emanations proceeding from it in sequence. In the highest of these realms, the most refined and spiritual, the first point contains within itself the entirety of creation, though not yet expressed in differentiated form. At this level, it is not understood as a personal deity, but as a pure foundation or principle of existence. From this first crown proceed the remaining spheres of that realm, which are regarded not as physical entities, but as sacred expressions or names of divine power. The initial series of 10 emanations unfolds in a precise order. From the infinite arises the first crown, associated with the idea of pure being. From this proceeds the principle of wisdom, followed by understanding. From understanding emerges mercy, then severity, followed by beauty, which harmonizes the preceding forces. From beauty comes victory, then glory, followed by foundation, and finally kingdom, which represents the completion of the process within that level of existence. Each of these stages is associated with a particular name of divine power, reflecting its function and character. From the final sphere of this first world arises the beginning of the next, marking the transition into a new level of creation. In this way, the process of emanation continues, each stage unfolding from the one before it, forming an ordered and interconnected system through which the infinite expresses itself in progressively more defined forms. The 10 emanations extending from the first crown to the 10th are regarded as the fundamental basis of all creation. The Kabbalists describe them as the 10 roots of the tree of life, arranged in the likeness of a vast human form known as the primordial or universal man, a symbolic figure fashioned from subtle substance. Within the highest world, the divine powers exist in their most perfect and unmodified condition. These pure radiations do not descend into lower realms or assume material form, but instead are reflected into the substances of the worlds beneath them. As light diminishes in reflection, so these powers, when mirrored into the next level, lose a portion of their original brilliance, becoming less intense though still bearing the likeness of their source. In the second world, the same order of emanations appears, yet in a more tangible and less radiant state. Here the spheres are understood as great spiritual intelligences, beings who assist in establishing harmony and order throughout the universe. The first sphere of this realm arises from the final sphere of the higher world and contains within itself the entire structure of the spheres that follow. From it proceed the remaining emanations, forming a complete system within this level of existence. Although they appear distinct, they are in truth reflections of the higher powers, now expressed through a more defined medium. The first sphere governs this world, encompassing not only its own order, but also influencing the realms below it. Within this second domain, these 10 powers are described as archangelic beings, each embodying a particular aspect of divine expression. The first is the crown of this world, associated with the presence and immediacy of the divine. From it emerges the principle of wisdom, followed by understanding, then mercy and severity. These are succeeded by beauty, which balances opposing forces, and then by victory and glory, representing expansion and splendor. The sequence continues with foundation, the stabilizing force, and concludes with kingdom, which brings the process to completion within that plane. From this final expression arises the beginning of the next world, continuing the chain of manifestation. These archangelic intelligences are conceived as powerful spiritual agents whose purpose is to express the divine attributes originating in the highest realm. All forms that appear in the lower worlds first exist in subtle and intangible states within the higher spheres. Creation is therefore understood as the gradual densification of these subtle principles into more concrete expressions. The powers of this second world are themselves reflected into a third domain, where they become further limited and take on a more structured and symbolic form. In this third world, the emanations correspond to celestial hierarchies, often described as choirs of spiritual beings. Though diminished in brightness compared to their origin, they retain immense potency relative to the material condition of humanity. The first sphere of this realm governs the entire structure, containing within itself the forces of its own world as well as those of the lowest realm. From this governing center proceed successive orders, each representing a distinct level of celestial life. These hierarchies unfold in a sequence parallel to the higher worlds. The first corresponds to the crown and is associated with the highest order of living beings, followed by wisdom expressed through dynamic and revolving forces. Next comes understanding, linked with stability and strength, then mercy, radiating harmony and brilliance. Severity follows, representing fiery and purifying power, succeeded by beauty, expressed through regal and balanced forms. The sequence continues with victory and glory, embodied in governing and radiant intelligences, and then foundation, which supports and transmits the higher influences. The final sphere of this world corresponds to the realm of humanity, representing conscious and moral existence. From this last sphere arises the beginning of the fourth and lowest world, marking the final stage in the descent of these emanations into the realm of substance and material expression. From the world of formation, the radiance of the 10 spheres is reflected downward into the world of action, which is the lowest of the 4. In this final realm, the original emanations assume the qualities of physical substance, giving rise to the visible sidereal system. This world of substance is the domain into which humanity descended, symbolically described as the result of a fall from a more refined state. The higher realms are regarded as a kind of paradise, while entry into material existence is portrayed as the taking on of dense bodies. When the spiritual forces of the superior worlds come into contact with the elements of this lower plane, their expressions are altered and diminished, producing distorted reflections that give rise to opposing hierarchies. In the teachings of the ancient mysteries, spirit was always regarded as the source of good, while matter was considered the origin of limitation and imperfection. Because matter restricts and obscures perception, it prevents humanity from fully realizing its divine nature. For this reason, it has been symbolically described as an adversarial force. This lowest world encompasses not only the system to which the earth belongs, but all systems of a similar nature throughout existence. There has been some difference of opinion concerning the arrangement of the spheres within this realm. The governing principle of this world is the first sphere, sometimes described as a fiery heaven or the primal motion from which all material activity proceeds. From this dynamic source emerges the field of the fixed stars, representing the visible zodiac, distinct from the invisible and spiritual counterpart of the higher world. From this stellar field proceed the planetary spheres in an ordered sequence, each expressing a particular aspect of cosmic influence. The sequence begins with the primal crown of this realm, the origin of material formation. From it arises the sphere of the zodiac, followed by the sphere associated with the most distant planetary influence, and then those of successive planetary forces. These include the expansive and harmonizing influences, as well as those of intensity and conflict, followed by the central solar principle. From the solar sphere proceed the more refined planetary expressions, and finally the sphere associated with the nearest celestial influence to the Earth. The sequence concludes with the domain of the elemental substances, representing the foundation of material existence. Some interpretations adjust this order by introducing an additional sphere at the highest level, thereby shifting the positions of the others and altering the final arrangement. Regardless of these variations, the essential structure remains a descending chain of forces moving from subtle origin to dense manifestation. Within this lowest world are also found the inverted reflections of the higher powers, expressed as negative or discordant forces. These are understood to arise from the distortion of the divine images when reflected in the coarse medium of matter. The Kabbalists describe these as shells, representing empty or corrupted forms. Corresponding to the 10 hierarchies of beneficent beings in the higher worlds, there exist 10 orders of these adverse entities, as well as a parallel set of ruling intelligences associated with them. Each of these negative hierarchies mirrors a higher principle, but expresses it in a perverted form. The first represents a divided and opposing crown, followed by forces that obstruct wisdom and obscure understanding. Subsequent orders disturb harmony, intensify destructive tendencies, and create imbalance in what would otherwise be beauty and order. Others promote conflict, confusion, and deception, while the final levels correspond to impurity and the densest expressions of material corruption. These forces are said to be invoked by those who seek power through improper means, yet such practices ultimately lead to the downfall of those who engage in them. The structure of these worlds, their beings, and their relationships is said to reflect a visionary pattern described in ancient prophetic symbolism. In that vision, different elements correspond to each of the 4 realms. The highest human-like form represents the divine world, the throne signifies the creative world, the firmament corresponds to the formative realm, and the living creatures symbolize the material world. These layers are described as interlocking systems, moving within one another like wheels. Finally, each of the 4 worlds is represented by a symbolic human figure, extending from its highest principle to its lowest expression. In each case, the uppermost sphere forms the head and the lowest forms the feet, illustrating a complete and ordered structure. These 4 archetypal forms are regarded as universal patterns of humanity, containing within themselves both masculine and feminine principles, and serving as the prototypes from which human existence is derived. The human body, like the universe itself, is regarded as a material expression of 10 spheres or globes of light. For this reason, humanity is called the microcosm, the little world, constructed in the image of the greater world of which it is a part. The Kabbalists also conceived a universal man whose head rests at the highest point of divinity and whose feet extend into the lowest material world. This corresponds symbolically to the vision of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, in which the head lies in the world of pure emanation, the arms and hands in the world of formation, the generative organs in the world of creation, and the legs and feet in the world of action. This archetype is known as the Grand Man of mystical literature, illustrating the interrelation of all cosmic levels. The mystical texts describe the significance of balance and equilibrium. Forces that are unbalanced perish, leaving the world void and without form until the Spirit of God establishes order. The aspirations of nature are then directed toward unity and synthesis, and a harmonious structure emerges. In this depiction, divine light and reflection intersect to form patterns of cosmic law, revealing principles of creation symbolized by the number 6. The human form attributed to deity is a metaphor for understanding, for the ultimate essence of God transcends all human expression. Whereas one philosopher posited God as a circle with the center everywhere and the circumference nowhere, the mystical teaching reverses this, portraying the balance of existence as a suspension in which equilibrium is omnipresent and the central point, though intangible, governs all. The mystical works present a system of absolute symbols, numbers and letters, each carrying number, idea, and form. Through the study of these symbols, the human mind is rooted in truth and reason, and all intellectual progress can be accounted for in relation to the evolution of numbers. The symbolic structure establishes the method by which knowledge may be acquired, discerned, and applied. When man is placed at the lowest point of manifestation, his true constitution is revealed. He exists across 4 worlds, only one of which is visible. His material organs correspond by analogy to hierarchies and intelligences in the higher worlds, demonstrating the law of interpenetration. Within him resides the entire universe, yet he is unaware of it because he cannot control what is superior to himself. Nonetheless, these higher spheres govern his being. Without them, he would remain inert. Death occurs when the life impulses of these higher spheres are deflected from the lower body. The life of man is the control exerted by these transubstantial spheres over their material reflection, and the spirit of man is the collective name for the intelligences focused upon substance through a central point known as the ego. The outer boundary of man's auric egg defines his cosmic cross-section, correlating with the universe itself. By secret mystical practice, the human consciousness may ascend these rings until it returns to the ultimate source, the Absolute. This process is termed the 50 Gates of Light. Tradition holds that one sage passed through 49 of these gates, but only the Supreme Teacher passed through the 50th, completing the cycle of divine return. In the 3rd edition of the Sepher Yetzirah, translated from the Hebrew by William Wynne Westcott, are appended the 50 gates of intelligence, which emanate from Bina, the 2nd Sephirah. The source of this knowledge is derived from Kircher's Oedipus Egyptiochus. The gates are organized into 6 orders. The first 4 contain 10 subdivisions each, the 5th contains 9, and the 6th consists of a single gate. The first order, called the elementary gates, is arranged as follows: chaos, hyle or first matter, formless, void, and lifeless, the abyss, the origin of the elements, earth without seed germs, water, air, fire, differentiation of qualities, and mixture and combination. The second order, called the decad of evolution, proceeds as follows: minerals differentiate, vegetable principles appear, seeds germinate in moisture, herbs and trees develop, fructification in vegetable life, the origin of low forms of animal life, insects and reptiles appear, fishes, representing vertebrate life in water, birds, vertebrate life in the air, and quadrupeds, vertebrate animals of the earth. The third order, called the decad of humanity, follows this sequence: appearance of man, the formation of the material human body, conferment of the human soul, the mystery of Adam and Eve, complete man as the microcosm, the gift of 5 human faces acting externally, the gift of 5 powers to the soul, Adam Kadmon, the heavenly man, angelic beings, and man in the image of God. The fourth order, called the world of spheres, consists of the heaven of the moon, the heaven of Mercury, the heaven of Venus, the heaven of the sun, the heaven of Mars, the heaven of Jupiter, the heaven of Saturn, the firmament, the primum mobile, and the empyrean heaven. The fifth order, called the angelic world, includes Ishim, sons of fire, Orphanim, the cherubim, Eralim, the thrones, Chashmalim, the dominions, Seraphim, the virtues, Melochim, the powers, Elohim, the principalities, Ben Elohim, the angels, and Cherubim, the archangels. The precise order of these angelic names is subject to debate, as different authorities propose varying sequences. The sixth order, called the archetype, consists of a single gate, God Ein Sof, he whom no mortal eye has seen. The 50th gate leads from creation back into the creative principle, allowing the one who passes through it to return to the unlimited and undifferentiated state of the Absolute. The 50 gates as a whole reveal a process of evolution. The rabbins taught that one seeking the highest understanding must pass sequentially through all of these orders, with each gate representing a stage in which the spirit, moving from lower to higher, encounters ever more responsive forms for expression and self-realization.